John Longworth of, I think, Leave Means Leave. That's the latest one. What do you make of all this?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that Boris has decided to show principle and resign. David Davis led the way. He is the Brexit Secretary. It says everything you need to know about this Brexit deal that the Prime Minister's put forward. Who could make it up that the Cabinet Office produced a white paper in parallel to the Brexit Secretary's white paper? A white paper, of course, which breaks the manifesto that the Tories put out at the last election, that crosses Theresa May's own personal commitments on the red lines, and that is not actually Brexit.
A manifesto, of course, which didn't win the election and which they've abandoned in other areas, notably social
But they
care.
are the ruling party, and she did actually restate this as her red lines. And by the way, don't forget, 74.4 million people voted for Brexit, and 85% of the population voted for parties that said they were leaving the customs union, the single market and the ECJ.
Right, OK, you come from the world of business. What's the big gain of leaving the customs union and leaving the single market?
Well, we can do trade deals around the world. We can cut tariffs unilaterally, which reduces the cost of living on food and consumer goods for people, and actually boost the economy by putting more money into people's pockets.
And have we had any serious approaches from any country outside the European Union offering us a better deal than that we already enjoy?
We don't have a good deal with the European Union. What we have with the European Union is a £90 billion trade deficit in goods and food.
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, if you're writing off the European Union, have we had an approach from any serious trading bloc outside the EU suggesting they're going to offer us better terms than we have under the EU?
The fact of the matter is this.
Well, we haven't, is the answer.
No, but we've...
I mean, let's just get this clear. We have not had a better offer, have we?
You're asking a question that's biased. 80% of the economy is not even concerned with trade with the EU or anywhere. So actually, leaving the EU boosts the domestic economy.
So this is the F-business approach as advocated by Boris Johnson, who you admire.
And furthermore, the fact is that the EU have a £90 billion trade surplus with us on goods and services. It has not worked for us, and we have no access to them on services because there is no single market in services in the EU to speak of. So it's a complete stitch-up.
Well, this is the Donald Trump approach, saying anybody who has a trade surplus with you is wrong.
No, the EU is a
said.
protectionist zone that favours our EU partners and not us. If we free ourselves from that, we can boost the domestic economy. We already have more trade with the rest of the world.
We are currently an EU partner. How does that mean they favour other partners rather than us? It's the same rule for everyone.
Because we have 90% of our economy is services, 10% is manufacturing.
Right.
For the EU, it is completely different. The Germans are manufacturers, the French produce agriculture.
And Mrs May had proposed in Chequers an opt-out on services.
Yeah,
so what's wrong with that?
It doesn't actually provide us with any benefit.
You're just saying services are what matter. Yeah. She's saying I'm going to exempt services from EU rules, and you're now saying that that's irrelevant.
Hold on. It's irrelevant because there is no single market in services in the EU anyway. So we're actually no better off and no worse off by exempting services. But we are far worse off by actually tying ourselves to the goods and agriculture market of the EU, where we have a £90 billion deficit. And what we should be doing is reaching out to the rest of the world, bearing in mind that the Remainers have prevented us doing this so far. Well, and also
it's the Remainers' fault that nobody's come forward and said, actually, they want to offer us a better trade deal than they offer the EU.
That we haven't engaged in serious trade negotiations. Absolutely.
Now, hang on, wait a minute. We've had Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary. We've had David Davis as Brexit Secretary, both of whom are leavers. You can't turn around and blame the Remainers, can you?
The vast majority of the Cabinet are rammed with Remainers, and the civil services remain to the core. So they have impeded it. They've actually damaged the UK negotiating position and the UK economy by impeding this process.
Yeah, but I mean, you're a businessman. The truth is, what you're admitting now is that Boris Johnson and David Davis have been a rank failure in their jobs.
The government have gone about this in completely the wrong way. They still can snatch it from the jaws of defeat.
So it's the government's fault? I mean, David Davis was the government. Boris Johnson was the government.
The government have not done a very good job.
Including David Davis and Boris Johnson.
And they have been dragged down by the fifth column in the UK of Remainers. The fact of the matter is we can still save this by going to WTO global trade terms, which is what we do the majority of our trade on in the world now, and by going for free trade, free markets and low taxes. What's not to like about that?
Well, I mean, one of the problems with the WTA terms is that Donald Trump doesn't like the WTO. He's squeezing funding and he's refusing to appoint new judges. So presumably as long as Donald Trump's there, the WTO is not going to work very well.
Well, we just do a trade deal with America. I'll bet that when Donald Trump comes over at the end of this week, he'll reiterate that he wants to do a trade deal with the UK.
And that will be, as we've been told by Wilbur Ross, that will be more science. That will mean chlorinated chicken, GM food, and of course hormone-injected beef.
This is all,
would that be a net
this is
gain?
all complete nonsense.
Well, that's what the Americans want.
No, of
they
course.
want to do a trade deal. That's what they want.
I'm saying that there's a problem with it. It's a complete nonsense. When you got up this morning, you drank tea and coffee. You had bagged salad for lunch. They're all chlorinated. Our water's chlorinated for safety reasons. Our bagged salads are chlorinated.
But you would accept there is consumer resistance to chlorinated chicken.
There may be consumer resistance.
And you would accept that. That's what the Americans want us to swallow as the price of a trade deal.
I don't know whether they want to swallow that or not, metaphorically speaking. The fact of the matter is that it's a complete hypocritical approach.
Okay.
Because all of these things we already have in the UK.
John Longworth, thank you very much indeed.